And we're going to continue with the third chapter of Silver on the Tree by Susan Cooper, which is called The Calling. Will has recovered the 6 signs in a modern day excavation, and he and Merriman are together and must now do something with them. Then they went together into the darkness, skirting the cleared arch and walls, climbing to the top of the grassy mound. There they stood under a sky dark now with scudding clouds that hid the moon, and Will took from his waist the linked belt of crossed circles that was the symbol of the circle of the light, and held it up in both hands. And time and space merged as the 20th and 4th centuries became, for a midsummer's instant, 2 halves of a single breath. And in a clear, soft voice, Will said into the night, old ones, it is time, now and for always, for the second time and the last. Let the circle be joined. Old ones, it is time, for the dark is rising. His voice ran strong. He held the signs high, and a glimmer of starlight flashed on the circle of crystal like white fire, and all at once they were no longer alone on the silent grassy mound. From all the world over, from every point of time, the shadowy forms of men and women from every kind and generation crowded there in the night. A great glimmering throng was gathered. The old ones of the earth came together. For the first time since 6 seasons earlier, the signs had in their presence been ceremonially joined. The darkness rustled. There was a formless muttering in the place, a communication without speech. Merriman and Will stood together on the hill in the night full of beings, and waited for the last old one, whose presence would weld this great gathering into an ultimate instrument of power, a force to vanquish the dark. They waited, and the night grew brighter with starlight. But she did not come. The glimmering forms murmured and rippled, as though the land blurred. And Will's consciousness, at one with the minds of his fellows there, was filled with unease. Merriman said low and husky, I was afraid of this. The lady, Will said helplessly. Where is the lady? The lady, indistinct as the wind, a long whisper ran through the darkness. Where is the lady? Will said softly to Merriman, she came at the turn of the year before last, for the joining. Why does she not come now? Merriman said, I think she has not the strength. Her power is worn by resisting the dark. You and I know well how she has spent herself in the past, and though she managed the effort for the joining of the signs, you remember that she had no strength even to take her leave. Yes, Will said, remembering a small, fragile old figure, delicate as a wren, standing beside him, overlooking a great throng of old ones as Merriman now stood. She simply faded, and then she was gone. And it seems that she is gone still, out of reach, gone until a helping magic may come from the sum of the centuries of this spell-ridden island, to bring her to our need for the first time, for the only time. The help of mere creatures is needed for the lady. Merriman drew himself up, a tall, shadowy, hooded figure in the night, dark as a pillar against the sky. He spoke without effort or great force, yet his voice filled the night and seemed to echo to and fro over the unseen heads of that enormous throng. Who knows, he said. Who can tell? Oh, all you circle of old ones, who can tell? And one voice came out of the night, a deep, beautiful Welsh voice, rich and smooth as velvet, speaking with a rhythm that gave it a lilt of singing. You mayn adored. Yin canu, the voice said. Ac, ye amre. Agarwiddles, yin dod, which means, being translated, the mountains are singing and the lady comes. There was a great stir among the airy crowd, and before he could help himself, Will let out a cry of joyful recognition at the words, the verse, of course, the old verse from the sea. He sobered suddenly. But what does it mean? We all know that line, Merriman, but what does it mean? The question echoed in many voices, whispering and serrating like the sea when a small breeze rises. The deep Welsh voice said reflectively, When the mountains are singing, the lady will come. And remember one thing, it is not in the old speech which we all use, that those words have come down to us, but in a younger language that is nevertheless one of the most ancient used by men. Merriman said softly, "Thank you, David, my friend." "Welsh," Will said. "Wales!" He stared into blank dark space, where clouds once more were drifting over the moon. He said hesitantly, his mind feeling for the right word and right idea, "I am to go to Wales, to the part where I have been once before, and there I must find the moment, the right way, somewhere in the mountains, somehow, and the lady will come." "And we shall be complete and singly bound," Merriman said, "and the end of all this questing will begin." "Pob hwyr, Will Stanton," said the rich Welsh voice gently in the darkness. "Pob hwyr, good luck," and it faded and died into the soft whine of the wind. And all the gathering around them faded too, vanishing away to leave them standing, two lone figures there in the darkening night, on the grass-smooth mound, in the midsummer day of the time into which Will had been born. Will said, "But for the first time to which I was called, the rising of the dark in the time of Arthur, we were allowed only a night and a day to bring help there, and I cannot keep to that limit now. So what of the great king, and the battle that is to come at Baden? What will—" He stopped himself, cutting off words that belonged not to old ones, but to men. Merriman said, completing it, "What will happen there? What will happen? What has happened? What is happening? A battle won for a little while, a respite granted, but not for long. You can see, Will, things are as they are, and will be. In Arthur's time, we have the circle to help us, for they have been gathered, and much can therefore be accomplished. But without words from the lady, the last height of power cannot be reached, and so the peace of Arthur that we shall gain for this island at Badon will be lost before long, and for a time the world will seem to vanish beneath the shadow of the dark, and emerge and vanish again, and again emerge, as it has done through all the length of what men call their history." Will said, "Until the lady comes." "Until the lady comes," Merriman said, "and she will help you to the finding of the sword of the Pendragon, the crystal sword by which the final magic of the light shall be achieved, and the dark be put at last to flight. And there will be 5 to help you, for from the beginning it was known that 6 altogether, and 6 only, must accomplish this long matter. 6 creatures, more and less of the earth, aided by the 6 signs." Will said, quoting, "When the dark comes rising, 6 shall turn it back." "Aye," Merriman said. Suddenly he sounded very weary. 6 for a hard turning." On impulse, Will quoted again, a whole verse this time, from the old prophetic rhyme that had come gradually to light a world ago, it seemed to him, with the growing of his own power as an old one. "When the dark comes rising, 6 shall turn it back. 3 from the circle, 3 from the track. Wood, bronze, iron, water, fire, stone. 5 shall return, and 1 go alone." He spoke the last line more slowly, as if he were hearing it for the first time. "Merriman, that last part, what does it mean? It has never put anything into my mind but a question. 5 shall return, and 1 go alone. Who?" Merriman stood there in the quiet night, his face obscured by shadow. His voice was quiet too, and without expression. "Nothing is certain, old one. Even in the prophecies, they can mean one thing, or they can mean another, for after all, men have minds of their own, and can determine their actions for good or ill, for going outward or turning in. I cannot tell who the one may be. None shall know until the last, until the one goes alone." He gathered himself and stood straighter, as if pulling them both back out of a dream. "There is a long road to tread before that will come, and a hard one. If we are to triumph at the end of it, I go back now to my Lord Arthur with the signs and the power of the circle, which only they can call. He held out his hand, barely visible in the star-washed darkness, and Will gave him the linked belt of crossed circles, gold and crystal and stone glittering between dark wood, bronze, iron. Go well, Merriman, he said quietly. Go well, Will Staunton, Merriman said, his voice tight with strain. Into your own place at this midsummer hour, where affairs will take you in the direction you must go, and we will strive at our separate tasks, the centuries through the waves of time, touching and parting, parting and touching, in the pool that whirls forever, and I shall be with you before long. He raised an arm, and he was gone, and the stars spun, and the night whirled about, and Will was standing moonlit in the hall of his home, his hand on the frame of a sepia Victorian print that showed the Romans building the amphitheater at Caerleon. And that is the end of chapter 3.